You have permission to use the interview any way you want to, Papa Michigan. Hi, this is Julius Garvey. Keep watching Papa Michigan Artiste Reasoning.
Thank you very
Peace
much.
and blessing.
Mr. Garvey, how you doing? Nice having you on Artiste Reasoning.
Okay, pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, man. You know, my name is Papa Michigan.
Okay.
And today is a special one as we sit with you. And you're the son of the great Marcus Mosiah Garvey. So we're talking legacy, liberation, and the message still echoes through reggae and Rastafari. Stay tuned, this one you don't want to miss, all right? Now, we're speaking about legacy and blood and spirit. How has it been the son of Marcus Garvey shape your mission in life, both in medicine and activism?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You know, I grew up Garvey because I was in the Garvey household, shall we say, growing up under, if you will, the tutelage of my father and my mother, but in some sense, mostly my mother directly, and indirectly my father, because basically my father died when I was 7. The last time I saw him, I was 5 years of age. But my mother kept not only his memory, but his ideology alive in the household. So he was always present. You know, she never remarried. There were no other male members, people visiting, shall we say. So it was a continuous Garvey household. And she was his right hand, if you will, because she was part of the whole mission, the redemption of African people. So from before their marriage and during the marriage and all through her life, she continued it. After my father died in 1940, she kept the organization alive to a large extent. She helped international as well as in Jamaica. We grew up in Jamaica, actually. So it has influenced my life in terms of who I am.
Yes.
I am the son of.
The son of. Yes, of course.
To some extent, that was my identity for a long time. Until you get your own identity.
Until you get your own identity.
Because over time, everybody gets their own identity. But for a long time, I was the son of. So in some sense, I was always being shaped by who my father was.
Daddy, by daddy.
Yeah, yes. Exactly right. So it was a big footsteps, but I never really wanted to follow in his particular footsteps in the political sense. So, you know, I found my own way. But I think the message that he left for us was service to our people and to uplift our people. And I think both myself and my brother, I have an older brother, or had. He died a few years ago at age 90. So, you know, I think both of us have tried to carry that mission forward in our own way. Yeah. Even if we're not doing it exactly the same way as our father. So.
Well, can you tell me a little about your brother?
Well, he was Marcus Garvey Jr. He was, we only had 2 of us, and he was basically an engineer and involved in math physics. Nowadays you call it STEM, etc. He used to teach back home at KC and Kingston Tech. And in New York also, he taught at a community college there. And he was an electrical engineer as a profession. Yeah. And he also was involved in the organization, Universal Negro Improvement Association. He was the president general for a period of about 10 years, I think. Yeah, 1990s. Yeah.
Wow, that's good. I'm glad you told me about him and the world.
Yes.
So I know you fight for your father's name to be cleared. So what did that moment mean to you personally?
Well, it was a great moment because it was very interesting. As you know, it came at the end of President Biden's term in office. It was January the 19th, and I think his last day in office was the 20th or the 21st, something like that. So it was like the last minute kind of thing, you know. And of course, we'd been pushing for it for a very, very long time in terms of a posthumous pardon. And now that's somewhat, you know, different from exoneration itself. We've been pushing for exoneration for a long time, since 1987. You know, many people, you know, many different Congress people from New York as well as from Chicago, etc. And it's been something that the Congressional Black Caucus has pushed for over time. But the posthumous pardon, we tried to get that from Obama, towards the end of his second term, 2016, and we made the petition to him in terms of all the legal document to prove that the trial was a farce. It was a political trial, and there was no evidence, an empty envelope, etc. And the judge should have recused himself. The prosecuting attorney taught had the witness perjure himself in terms of lying as an employee of the UNIA, etc., etc. Total number of irregularities. Anyway, we presented that to Obama, like I said, at the end of his second term, but he ignored it. He did not do anything. Yeah,
strange.
So it gets strange. We thought it was a no-brainer.
We thought it was a no-brainer. Everyone asked me about that.
Yes. Because here he was with an African parent. You'd believe he understood whose shoulders he stood on. But apparently, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why he would have walked away from that, because it was the end of his second term. You wouldn't believe that he would be afraid of political repercussions.
No.
But anyway, so we were very happy with President Biden doing that, and it was a culmination of a lot of work by a lot of people. The Congressional Black Caucus, in particular. There was a letter from, I think, about 22 members of the Congressional Black Caucus that was signed, specifically to President Biden, advocating for him to use the posthumous pardon to do this. And that was one of the final things, I think, that pushed him over, to do this, as well as a lot of political pressure in his home state in Delaware. There were a lot of people there who were working for this. And there were thousands of letters and petitions.
And all of us, the diaspora, all of us.
Yes.
But is there anyone in particular you would like to big up?
No, that's what I said. I think, first of all, it's the law firm of Aiken Gump. I mean, they've been with me for 20 years. 20 years. Pro bono.
Pro bono?
Pro bono, because I couldn't afford,
no money.
And this is a first-rate law firm there in Washington, but it's a global, international law firm. And they stuck with this. And like I said, they were the ones that did the Obama thing back in 2016, and from before then. So they're the big supporters, shall we say, or the people who are out front fighting. As a law firm, because as you know, it has to be, on legal grounds. So they did all of the investigation. I might say another person would be Justin Hansford, who is a lawyer. He's at Howard and is head of the legal department there, and he's done a lot of work as well, working with the law firm, and in terms of going over the records, the trial records, and outlining all of the irregularities, and highlighting the reason why it was a miscarriage of justice,
of course,
and how it should be corrected. So
it should be corrected.
Those are some of the people that were foremost.
I'm glad we can pick them up. So let me choose, and I'm thankful for that. So why did you choose heart surgery?
Well, basically, I wouldn't say heart surgery. It's cardiothoracic and vascular. So it's a broad field, and I've lived a long time, so to speak, and as you know, things change. So when I went into this aspect of surgery, it was largely what we call thoracic surgery, meaning everything in the chest, and what everything in the chest means, it meant the lungs and what we call the mediastinum, which is the esophagus and the middle of the chest.
Yes.
And of course, the heart is there.
So number one.
So the heart was included, but it also included the blood vessels, because there was no separate specialty at that point in time. Vascular surgery did not become a separate specialty until later on. So at that time, we were doing, in a sense, everything. Shall we say the chest surgery, and then cardiac surgery became a specialty just when I was getting into things. I remember there was a famous cardiac surgeon in Montreal named Weinberg. We transplanted the internal mammary artery into the coronary arteries and so on and so forth. And that sort of thing gave it its start. And this is, back in the 60s.
I was just going to ask you, the 60s.
Yeah. So anyway, like I said, everything was sort of bundled together. And breaking out from that, then you had the different specialties of, shall we say, thoracic surgery as a subgroup, cardiac surgery as one group, and then vascular surgery became another group. So, I kind of morphed into all of those three. And towards the end of my career, I was doing mostly vascular surgery.
Surgery.
Yeah, because cardiac surgery is very demanding, a lot of emergencies, et cetera, et cetera. And but I practiced for a fairly long time. I've retired now for probably about 7 years, I think. Yeah.
But you just answered that question. I was just going to ask you.
Yeah, about 7 years. Yeah,
about 7 years. Wow, you worked for a long time.
I did.
Well, they asked you to stay on?
Well, more or less. I mean, how should I say? I mean, you want to help people, so you continue as long as you're capable, so to speak, and it's not a burden. Then after a while, it becomes, a burden physically. With time-wise, you want to do other things. So, like I said, I retired about 7 years ago. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, if your father were alive, how would you view the state of Black consciousness?
Well, in some sense, it's hard to evaluate. I think at the time when he was alive, shall we say, most Black people knew, shall we say, who the enemy was. Meaning that racism was more overt, because you had lynching in the South. Yeah. If you're thinking of, let's say, the United States, people were still being lynched. And let's say now we're talking about the 20s, and coming back from World War I, people were being lynched in uniform and so on. Wow. There was Jim Crow, colored people only here, white people only there. So, and then different places where Black people lived were being burnt down. There's a Black Wall Street. Everybody knows that one.
Yes.
But there are other places in Florida, etc. Towns, Black towns that were being assaulted and burnt down. If white people felt that Black people had done something they didn't like, or what have you, or they simply wanted the territory. Or they were upset that Black people were doing something for themselves. So it was a very bad time. So and I prefer to use the term African. So let's use African Americans and understood who the enemy was, so to speak, who was keeping them down. It was Jim Crow, and it was lynching, and it was sharecropping. Yeah, laboring on the plantations and so on the onerous circumstances, and people playing tricks with, the things that you buy for your own farm and so on and so forth. So it was a very difficult time. So I think my father coming at that time, shall we say, to elevate the consciousness of African people worldwide, it really was appropriate, and it struck a chord in terms of the hearts and minds of African people worldwide, because they had been through this. They had been through World War I. They'd seen all of the viciousness. They had fought for democracy, and they'd come back and they weren't getting democracy. They were being lynched, and they were going back to Jim Crow and abuse, etc., etc. So his message was very well received. And I think there was an understanding of the fact that we had to unify, to be together, to work together, develop our own communities. As you know, part of the UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association, was African Communities League.
Yes.
So, African communities needed to be built for African people, along with the economic underpinning in terms of business, etc. But since that time, of course, because of all that has happened, shall we say, the tide against Marcus Garvey, because of him showing the way forward for African people worldwide, and we can get to the West Indies or Africa subsequently, but him showing the way forward, of course, that attracted the attention of the negative forces who wanted to keep black people down. So what ended up coming out of that was the integration movement, so to speak, where you might say kind-hearted whites, if you will, were fostering or helping to foster the development of African Americans. And some people thought that that was the way forward, meaning to integrate into white communities. And in some sense, that was an attraction because white people were burning down black communities. But, that certainly was not the answer. Because if they burn down your community and your community is separate from theirs, what are they going to do with you in their community? Right. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, superficially, that ideology, if you will, won out at the time. And I think subsequent to that, I would say African Americans have made, certain positive strides. I mean, 1964 and 1965, Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act, etc. You have, in some sense, more advantages for black people moving into certain higher places. Obviously, we just talked about Obama. I mean, nobody would have thought back in the 20s that you'd ever have a black president if you don't count somebody who had, a black grandparent or great-grandparent or something like that. We won't go into that historically. But, nobody would have thought that you'd have had a black president. So that seemed like an advance. Yes. But then if you look at what Obama was able to do for black people specifically, I mean, it's lacking. It's lacking. So having a black president doesn't mean anything for black people. Doesn't mean anything. Because the system hasn't changed. Right. You see, and you can see over time now that, the system has resisted transformation. And you can see that coming out of the civil rights movement. And the civil rights movement was a wonderful movement, with Martin Luther King, certainly Malcolm X and others, fighting for civil rights, because after all, you're an African American, you're a citizen of America, you should enjoy full civil rights as a citizen. And that was a significant fight, and a lot was gained in terms of that legally, etc. And so that, people could not discriminate legally. But you don't change the hearts and minds of people by laws. Yes. And the ideology of America itself hasn't changed over time. It's still very much a racist country. It's built on racist principles. And we see that now coming into the Trump the Trump era that's raising its head significantly. Yes. And that's showing the true nature, shall we say. So I think, it's a long way to answer your question about black consciousness. I don't mind. I'm loving it. I'm learning. I'm loving it. Continue. Because I think, the consciousness of African Americans as Africans first and Americans second. Has dimmed over time because of the integration movement. Martin Luther King saw that before he died. There's an interview that I've seen on YouTube of Harry Belafonte. And Harry Belafonte was saying that Martin Luther King came to him, or they had a meeting in his house, because, as you know, he was a major proponent and supporter of the civil rights movement. He gave money, he brought other significant actors and et cetera, and other people to the civil rights movement. And he said Martin Luther King was very sad, even though, they had just had a successful march and so on and so forth. He said, "What's the matter, Martin?" And he said, "I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing, about this integration business. I don't know whether I'm bringing my people into a burning house or not." So, and this was the time, of course, of the Vietnamese War. And he was a big anti-war person, a peaceful person. He was a very religious Christian person. And he came out against the Vietnam War. And he said it was a waste of American wealth and material. And the country should be using that wealth to develop its citizens, including black people. And of course, that's probably what got him assassinated. But, so he himself, who was a champion of integration, questioned whether or not he was doing the right thing. And by that, I think what he meant was that America could not continue as it was unless you change the system. Integration is not going to help you, because it's a system that is against you. It's a system of rabid, shall we say, capitalism, where it's winner take all. And you have X number of billionaires. You have a top 1% or 5% of the people with 90% of the wealth. Or 80% of the wealth, and then you have a small middle class, and a larger poor class. I mean, America is a wealthy country. They should not have homeless. They should not have people on the streets. You know what I mean? And you should not have to pay for education. You shouldn't have to pay for health care, and so on and so forth. The richest country in the world. So I think those were the things that he saw. And he knew that unless the system changed, integration would not achieve the freedom, prosperity, and liberation for African American people. So again, a long way to answer your question. The consciousness now of black people, I think, of African Americans, may be rising again with the Trump administration, because clearly he's anti-black, if you will. And I think people are saying, well, look, we now have to come together to do our own thing, realizing that, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is out the window.
Out the window.
He doesn't even want to talk about African-American history, as if it doesn't exist, etc. Slavery was a wonderful time, and so on and so forth. So African-American consciousness of their Africanness, I think, was at a high point in the 20s, possibly early 30s. And then, became more American, and maybe it's becoming more African again. Because I think another index of that is, I think there are a lot of people who are migrating now to Africa, not just as tourists, but actually leaving the country and going to places like Ghana and so on, West Africa in general.
In general. So, thanks for that answer. I mean, it's good. So let me ask you, Pan-Africanism, how can it stay relevant with young people in this digital age?
Well, that's even more relevant because, in the age of my dad, again, 20s, 30s, he developed a following of more than 6 million people.
6 million?
And all he had was a newspaper and his voice, his ability to travel.
Yes.
You see, by boat.
By boat.
You see, so that was his technology, to travel by boat and to send a newspaper around the world.
Around the world.
Now you digitally you can go around the world in another second. In another second. You see, and you don't even have to travel by plane. You can go by jet, but you don't have to travel by plane.
Right.
You can get on the internet or what have you, and Zoom. You Zoom all over the place.
We're there.
You see what I mean? So the message, any message that you have, information, etc. Connectivity is now at an all-time high.
Yes.
So there's no reason for us not to be united as a people, except our lack of consciousness and our lack of understanding that we have to do this for ourselves.
Yes.
We have to have our own agenda in terms of, shall we say, Pan-Africanism, which is not just unity, but is working together in terms of commerce, in terms of industry, in terms of helping each other. And this includes, all the way from the Caribbean to the continent itself. I mean, the continent needs to move towards really a United States of Africa, or however you want to call it, a federated states of Africa, so that you really have one government, not 54 or 55 different nations. Because you can't accomplish anything together as 55 nations. Because it's easy, for the opposition, shall we say, to pick off one at a time.
Yes.
Whereas if you have one nation then you can really speak with one voice. You can have one army. You can have one security system. You can have one currency. And certainly at the present time, they're advocating for the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is moving forward. Slowly, but it's moving forward. And but it needs one customs union in terms of moving goods and services across the continent.
Yes.
So it needs railroads, it needs roads, it needs airlines to link all the countries together, etc., etc. That's the only way Africa can be powerful. But like I said, we have the connectivity, but a lot of the platforms we don't own and we don't control. So we're still getting our news. I get my news from Africa, shall we say, through CNN or through BBC or through Al Jazeera. I would like to get it through an African station that gives me the real news or an African perspective. And same thing with vice versa.
Yes.
What Caribbean news are they getting in Africa and so on and so forth. And then you go deeper than that in terms of the educational system. Because certainly us in the diaspora, we have been disconnected from the continent for over 400 years. So the continent doesn't know us, and we don't necessarily know the continent.
Right.
No, how has our educational system bridged that gap? It hasn't bridged that gap yet.
It hasn't bridged it, has it?
Because as you know, whether it's in Jamaica or here in the United States, most of the curriculum is still the curriculum that the colonizer has given us. Or here, even the HBCUs, the curriculum is largely the same curriculum that other American universities use. So it doesn't teach you about Africa and doesn't teach you history from the African perspective.
No, it doesn't.
It teaches you things from the European perspective, because that's the dominant culture. They have rewritten history and claimed all of the benefits that accrued over the last 2,000 years as theirs. And of course, Africa had civilization going back, to 10,000 BC. So it's a skewed vision of the world itself. So we're still absorbed in that. So we're still turning out young people who are miseducated, as Carter G. Woodson said back in 1930. We're miseducated. That we're being educated by the same people who enslaved us. That means we're learning the same morality, the same ethics, and the same history, and the same economics as the people who disadvantage us and dehumanize us. So what does that turn us into?
We remain the same.
If it says that if there's no back door, and we go and we look for a back door, and we don't find a back door, we make a back door. Because we don't know how to go in through the front door. Nobody taught us to go into the front door.
Yes.
So, those are the problems that still exist in us that prevents us from really accomplishing what my dad wanted us to accomplish back in the 20s and 30s.
Wow. That's a beautiful way of saying it. Thank you. And we are in your house.
Pardon?
I should say we are in your house.
Yes.
With all these books.
Yeah, I love to read. That's my fun.
Once somebody robbed a lady house, and they took everything, the television and everything. And when she came in, she said, "Thank God they didn't take her wealth, which is her book."
Well, that's the same way I feel.
And to what you were saying a while ago, there's an African proverb that say, if you want to go fast, you go by yourself. But if you want to go far, you go together.
Absolutely.
So you're right.
Absolutely.
So the Jamaican youths growing up in the struggle and uncertainty, what would you say to them?
Well, it's not so much the Jamaican youth. I think Jamaica is failing our youth.
Jamaica is failing
our youth, man, because we're supposed to provide opportunity for our youth to develop and grow and be educated. Well, no, I don't know the figures now, but I know back in the day, less than 3% of our population there in Jamaica ended up going to university. Now, what kind of business is that? What kind of business is that? If you don't educate your young people, how are you going to prosper? Because education is the key to any advancement. You know what I mean? Knowledge is the key. And we're wasting our young people, and many of them are brilliant. And I know so many successful cases who have left Jamaica, come abroad.
Like yourself.
Yes, but I was somewhat privileged, actually. So I didn't look at myself. I grew up middle class or upper middle class, whatever, in Jamaica. I went to Ulmer's boys' school. But, a lot of people don't have that ability to go through the private schools, etc.
Private school, yeah.
Let alone university. So they don't have that ability to be educated with significant skills. So it's not the fault of the youth if they end up being criminals, shall we say, or finding another way to scuffle and to make a living. Because survival is the first rule of life, so to speak. You have to survive. So, but in an event, in terms of speaking to the youth, basically, it's a matter of vision for you, even if your circumstances are difficult. There's so many people who have come up from disadvantaged homes in Jamaica and elsewhere, who have developed in Jamaica or abroad and made great successes of themselves, not only in athletics per se, because that may be one of the, you might say, almost easy ways to get educated or to make your mark in the world. But through other means, let's say becoming doctors, lawyers, engineers, innovators, businessmen, etc. A lot of us have done that, leaving the country, etc., or staying in the country. But it's difficult for those who you might consider the underclass, whether it's the trench town or the denim town or wherever, and the so-called back of wall. But if you have a dream, try to pursue it, and hard work, perseverance. Those are the two things that shall we say, no class of people own it. Hard work and perseverance. Okay, all of us have it or have access to it, and then knowledge is available to everybody. And my daddy said, knowledge is in the world out there. You can find it, seek it. If you want knowledge, seek knowledge. Intelligence rules the world, and ignorance carries the burden. And nowadays, of course, you're sitting here with your tablet and a cell phone. You can Google anything. You can get any information that you want. And nowadays, of course, we have AI, etc. You can ask AI, chat GPT, any sort of question, and blah, 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 blah. So you can educate yourself. Okay, so that's what I would say to young people is if you can't get it through the system, create your own platform, so to speak, to educate yourself and therefore develop now, what is your passion? What is your passion? What do you want to do? Is it music? Is it athletics? Is it engineering? Is it theater? Whatever it is, hard work and perseverance, and you'll get through.
You hear that, young ones? Instead of on your phones and you just on your TikTok and wasting your time, you have artificial intelligence that can help you. You must use it, all right? Thanks. Do you have any story or memory from your mother that reveals who Marcus Garvey was personally? I know you said you were 7.
Yeah, well, I suppose in my little memories, I mean, I remember him, we were in England, we went to England and we stayed there about 2 years. And then we came back to Jamaica. And he died 2 years later. But, I remember us living there. And I remember, him, taking us to the movies, buying us ice cream, chocolates, and that kind of thing, myself and my brother, and watching us play in the living room with the carpets on the floor and hiding behind the sofa and so on. And playing in the backyard, when it snowed, with the snowballs and that kind of thing. So those are the types of memories that I have of him. A warm person who was interested, shall we say, fondly of myself and my brother, and he was very, very kind to us as far as that went, per se. So, my memories of him as if he was this huge person, but he wasn't really. He was 5'7" or 5'8", But for me, he was a big man. I was, of course, 5 years of age, so I saw him as this great big person. But he was a great big, protective, loving person to me.
I spoke to a lady. I interviewed her. Her name is Kathleen. She said she saw your father on Bond Street in black suit, and the ladies around him were all in white. Have you ever seen that before?
I've never seen a picture of him in a black suit per se.
Okay, I get you.
But yeah, but like I say, all of the pictures that I've seen of him, and even remembering him sort of in the living room at home, he had a jacket on, as I can recall. I don't remember having a tie on, but you know, he would wear a three-piece suit, etc., and so on. And you see all of his pictures, very, very well dressed.
Well dressed.
Yeah,
that's what she said. Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Garvey, so you're a man of science. How do you view purpose, spirituality, and ancestral calling?
Interesting. I mean, that's a big question. And I see the dreadlocks. I know where that's coming from. I know where that's coming from.
You see where it's coming from?
Yeah. But you see, I think this is an aspect of my father that people don't understand. A lot of people don't understand. But his message was really a spiritual message.
Yes.
You see? And I think Rastafari is one group.
Yes.
That has understood that.
Yes.
And we have to big up Rasta from that perspective. Because, you know, the African understanding of the universe is a spiritual understanding. It's an understanding of balance between spirit and matter. It's not a materialistic understanding because, you know, matter cannot create itself.
No.
You see, the European thinks that matter is primary and the only thing there is matter. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that is important is what you can measure in some way. You can weigh it, or you can pull it apart, or you can see it, or whatever. And that's what's important. But no, the African understands the spiritual essence. And, you know, one of my favorite quotations from my father is that God and nature first made us what we are, and then out of our own creative genius, we make ourselves what we want to be. Follow always that great law, and let God and the sky be our limit and eternity our measurement. Now that's a whole philosophy, right? That's a whole philosophy. That's a whole philosophy. You see, and that was his understanding of man as being one with the Creator and one with nature. And then he goes on to say, you know, that man, you know, can master his mind, shape his character, and create his own destiny. Mm-hmm. And anything you want in nature can be accomplished using the creative intelligence of your mind. Mm-hmm. So he was very much into mental science, you see, and he was very much into knowledge. I quoted you before: intelligence rules the world, and ignorance carries the burden. Yes. But he said, seek knowledge, you know, because all the knowledge is in the world. But the most important knowledge is self-knowledge. Self-knowledge. Yes, he said, with self-knowledge, I mean, you become so strong in yourself that nobody can intrude on your rights. Mm-hmm. And nobody can prevent you from manifesting who you are and who your best self is. Mm-hmm. So he was a master of his own mind. Mm-hmm. and a manifester of his spirit. A manifester of his spirit. Yeah, and he always said, you know, your humble servant, Marcus Garvey. I always said, your humble servant, Marcus Garvey. So he was here to serve, you see, and he understood the unity of God, the nature and humanity as one, a trinity that is one. And I think that's part of his message that a lot of people don't understand. And that's the African part of his message. Yeah. You see what I mean? A lot of people will say, okay, you know, for example, he said that, you know, he must have a strong economic base. But if you look at the kind of economic base that he was talking about, it was cooperative economics. You say it was naked capitalism, you know, where you know, it doesn't matter what you dig up and how you despoil the earth and how many oil spills you have, or when you dig up the gold, you know, the technology that you use or the chemicals that you use poison the water for the village, or you turn the villagers out as you're digging up the thing, and so on and so forth. It's not that kind of capitalism. It's an economic, you know, system that takes into account nature itself, but is beneficial to the people. You see, so it's a cooperative economics, and it's a social entrepreneurship. All of his economic ventures were social entrepreneurship. It was for the community and for the benefit of the community. So he understood, like I said, the spiritual aspect that joined everything together. It was not separate. It was not a duality, shall we say, but basically a unity of the universe, and it was up to the individual. And he said that every individual was responsible for himself and his or herself, really, and the fulfillment of their own destiny.
Yes.
So don't point the finger at somebody else. Don't blame somebody else. Point the finger at yourself and look in the mirror. And the man in the mirror that needs to change is the person who you must point the finger at, you see. So it's personal responsibility for the transformation that you want to bring about and you want to see in yourself. And ultimately, you work cooperatively in your community, to raise everybody up. And that's the essence of his mission, so to speak. And sort of getting back to the point that I made before, is that the Rastafarians have been the ones that have carried that forward practically, because there is that spirituality, that is essential, and there's that understanding of community, and then there's that reverence for ancestry and Africa. You see, my dad pointed that out, Ethiopia and so on, and they held on to that and held on to Haile Selassie, and that's continuity of our history going back to, BC and back in the day, so to speak. So that's essential for the transformation of African people at the current time. Is to understand that spirituality is the basis of who we are as African people. And unless we honor, that spirituality and the understanding that our ancestors had of that. And I'll go back to another quote: people without the knowledge of their past history, tradition, and culture is like a tree without roots. So you have to understand the ancestors. You have to understand their traditions. What was the civilizations that they built? Democracy didn't start in the West. No. Government didn't start in the West. No. These people were late when it comes to civilization, and you have to question whether they have such a thing as civilization. When you have all these world wars that kill, how many people died in World War I? I was just looking at something about it's something like 10 million people dead, 20 million people wounded, and so many people starved and displaced, and so on and so forth. And World War II was twice as many. You know what I mean? So that's not civilization. That's savagery. You see, and you look at what they did to us over the last 500 years. That's savagery. What they did to the Native Americans, that's savagery. What they did to the Native Australians, that's savagery. So that's not something to emulate. You know what I mean? And that's one of the problems that we have, is that because of the miseducation, a lot of our leadership is emulating the Western perspective. But the Western perspective has been destructive of world harmony, because all it's been is war and rumors of wars, as Bridget would say, war on top of war, So we need to look at our own history and traditions and develop, those traditions that we find that are, significant in terms of how we should govern ourselves, how we should relate to each other, men and women and people, collective cooperative economics, collective work and responsibility, that kind of thing, unity, and the self-transformation that I've been talking about, and faith in the ancestors and the creativity. All of those things are important. And all those things are present in my father's teachings.
You answer a question I was going to ask you, because I was going to ask you, what can ordinary people do, not government, to continue your father's legacy?
Each one can transform themselves and make themselves a better person.
Yes.
Each of us has a purpose. You know,
Yes.
you have a purpose. You have a purpose. I have a purpose. You know, I'm trying to fulfill my purpose. So each of us must fulfill our purpose to the maximum, and it's our responsibility to do that.
To do that.
You know, I mean, none of us have the same fingerprints. You know, everybody has different fingerprints. None of us look alike.
Everything is
so
unique.
each one of us has a special thing that we come with, and we can manifest that thing. You know what I mean? That's the beauty of the divine, if you will, God, if you will, the creator, whatever you want to call it. You know, of that, each of us is special in our own way. And we are involved in special circumstances.
Yes.
You know, I was born in Jamaica. Somebody else is born in the United States. Somebody is born in Africa, North Africa, South Africa, East, West. Different circumstances. You know what I'm saying? So each of us has an opportunity to do something very, very special because each of us is special.
Of course.
You see? So that's our responsibility. We have the gift. We have the gift of life. Yes. You know what I mean? And we have the gift of all kinds of human qualities.
Yes.
You know, all we have to do now is manifest that.
Yes.
Find our purpose and manifest our purpose.
Thank you.
You know?
Find your purpose and manifest it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So your final word to the diaspora. Now, if this were your last chance to speak to the global African diaspora, what message would you leave?
Well, basically, you know, I would leave a Chinese proverb. May we live in interesting times. I would say that we're living in interesting times. That's what the Chinese man told us a long time ago. may we live in interesting times. Because nowadays it's interesting times.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, man, it's very, very interesting. And if you look back, you know, like let's say the last 100 years, you'll find that us as a group of people, we've made progress when there have been interesting times. After World War I, World War I was an interesting time when Babylon was killing each other.
Wow.
Okay, and Marcus Garvey came on the scene. He developed African consciousness.
Yes.
And he set the tone for so many people here in the United States. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, in the Caribbean, all the different leaders in the Caribbean, you know, Kwame Nkrumah, Nnamdi Azikiwe, you know, all of them, right, Lumumba, all the way, Kwanda, all the way down to Mandela. All of those people have paid homage to Marcus Garvey. So that was a transformative time. Okay, and you follow that time forward, and then now the next interesting time was after World War II, 1945.
Wow.
You see, and then you get to the Pan-African Conference in Manchester, and that was an interesting time that led to the independence movements in the 50s. You see, so those were two interesting times. And now, of course, you have all the different African countries are independent, 54 or so. And you have about 14 different Caribbean countries that are independent. You have, you know, the Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act and so-called, you know, independence of African American people within the country itself. But still, we're not free in terms of liberation, in terms of who we are, in terms of being in control of our own destiny. So now we have a situation where, you know, I think it's quite evident that the hegemony of the United States is crumbling because of internal problems, shall we say, divisiveness. And withdrawal from the world scene in terms of so many things, whether it's the UN or the different treaties in terms of nuclear weapons and so on, and the behavior relative to Gaza and Israel and so on. So you can say that the hegemony of the United States and Europe is no longer paramount. And you see China rising, and you see Russia rising.
Yes.
You see this South rising with the BRICS nation, etc. So now you have this third now interesting times. So this is now our time to really make another move. This is the move now in terms of total independence
Hmm.
and unity for us as black people, African people. We have 1.5 billion of us, in Africa and in the diaspora. And we have been all over the world. We have learned so much. We have so many capacities, capabilities, and resources, and we have the richest continent in the world.
The richest continent in the world.
And at this point in time, the forces that have been keeping us down and keeping us divided, those forces are now being weakened. Like I said, World War I, World War II, internal conflict. And so now this is our time now to make that move that brings us back to who we have been and who we should be in terms of African people on the world stage with our own perspective of what life is all about and how we should live our life economically, socially, and culturally, etc. So
thank you.
You're entirely welcome. It's been my pleasure.
No, I want to speak out to you about music and Rastafari. How do you see your father's teaching reflected in reggae music and its global influence today?
Well, I think it's the ideology of Marcus Garvey is permeates, shall we say, reggae music, because reggae music is basically a freedom music. It's some music that is expressing our strength as a people, the Jamaican people, and the fact that we will not be restricted. We will continue a fight for our freedom. We'll get up and we'll stand up.
Mali, get up and stand up, fight for your right.
Exactly right. We'll fight for our rights. We won't let anybody, prevent us from doing that. And it permeates everything. And of course, Bob is an exemplar of that, a paramount exemplar of that. But I also have to big up Jimmy Cliff. Jimmy Cliff was before Bob.
Yes.
And I think he was very seminal. And the harder they come, right? The bigger they are, the harder they come, the harder they fall. And many rivers to cross.
Many rivers to cross.
He really told our story. And of course, Burning Spear. That was Marcus Garvey, where it's come to pass.
You know what's going on.
Definitely. A little bit of it.
A lot.
A little bit of it, and so to me it permeates all of the reggae music. I hated to see it go to dance hall because I think that was a turning point. But reggae music was soul music.
It is.
It was the aspirations of young people for their own manifestation, their own freedom, and the desire to create a system based on their own freedom and their own understanding of themselves as human beings. You know what I mean? And even with Peter Tosh and the marijuana and so on and so forth, it was a way to free yourself from the illegality of the system.
Yes.
Not in a necessarily illegal way, but just in a sense to be free to determine your own direction. So I love reggae music. Obviously, I think it's part of a significant part of our culture, and obviously it captured the world. And it came at a time too with the rise in, shall we say, Black consciousness. Around the world. And I can't say enough about it. I know Bob used to travel with a picture of Marcus Garvey and a picture of Haile Selassie in the background of his band there, in terms of how the scenery was on the stage.
Of course.
Yep. And he used to read the philosophy.
You want to know why? Because we call... Your fathers haven't called the prophet of Rastafari movement. You know that?
Yeah.
He's called the prophet. So how do you view the spiritual connection between Garveyism and Rastafari?
So Rastafarians identify, shall we say, understood. The spiritual message of Marcus Garvey. And certainly they've done it more than any other group. I don't know another group that has understood the spiritual message. You see, a lot of other people have understood the economic message. You know, a lot of them have understood, shall we say, the Afrocentric message, you know, but not many of them have understood the spiritual message. And none have understood it as clearly as Rastafari. None of them. None of them. Because, you know, when you see a brethren, you know he's a brethren. You know what I'm saying? He's an African person. He's a spiritual person. You know that.
Of course. Know that.
I mean, if you feel it, you know, and that's the level at which you can function. And, you know, brethren to brethren, you know what I mean? And sister. So, yes, more power.
More power.
Yeah.
But do you have any favorite reggae artists?
Well, you know, I guess in some sense, those are with the three that I would mention. Yeah. And then the younger ones, I'm not really.
You don't know the younger ones?
I don't know the younger ones, no. But that was my time, so to speak, in terms of being involved with the music and listening to the music, yeah.
And we need the younger ones to spread the culture.
Exactly. You know, music is our art itself, of course. Is the most important way to spread the message
and inspire change, right?
Exactly right. Because it gets to a level that is more than the words, you know, and in some senses even more than the sound of the music, you know. But it is able to carry a message that is not describable in that sense, because obviously the message is spiritual, and that's where the creativity of the music comes from. It comes from a spiritual source. So if it is done well, and what we're talking about is as music that has been done well, you get the message, you know, through the music and through the lyrics. So I think the reggae artists have done a fantastic job in that sense.
Thank you very much. You know I Am One, right?
No, I didn't know that.
You never heard of Michigan and Smiley?
No, like I said, my time with the music is back in the day. So
well, I Am One.
Wonderful.
I'm singing for 47 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, I should have told you that before we even start talking.
No, I didn't know that. No, Jerry, I've never really mentioned, you know, the background.
All the background.
Well, congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
So, Dr. Julius Martin, give thanks.
You guys are important. The artists are important to carry the message, carry the culture forward. Yeah.
Yes. To carry that Garvey philosophy out there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir, for sharing your wisdom on keeping the fire of Garveyism alive. And to all watching, remember the mission continues. One God, one aim, one destiny. This is Papa Michigan for Artist Reasoning. Real talk, real roots, real people. Dr. Garvey, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Up, stand up.
Don't
give up the fight.
Don't give up the fight.
There you go.
Man. Thank you very much.
Peace and blessings.
Thank you.
My pleasure. It's I didn't know you were a performing artist.
Art. Yeah, man. You know the song, No More Uptown, Downtown. We all run together on a one ground. With the social barriers broke down. That's
like
me.
That. I like that. I've never heard it before, but I like that. You know, like I said, I've been away from the, you know, that kind of music, shall we say, for a long time.
Yes. And there's another one named, Every day the girl them dress up in her trousers. What happened to your skirts and blouses? Why can't I man see you in your dresses? That these things unto judge are not pleases. And every day them a worship vanities. And them greatest lust is jewelries. Mind jolly cure with diseases. That's another big one.
I like it.
You like that one too?
I know he would like that.
Yeah, man. Give thanks and praise to the Most High Jah. Enough love to each and everyone I want to tune into Artiste Reasoning. With I, Papa Michigan. But thanks for listen, thanks for stay. One love listen from yard to far away. Knowledge we share, uplift every day. Artiste Reasoning, me say we pave away. But thanks for love the culture, the roots, the message, and the power of a voice. Every week we come together for reason, reflect and rise. So until next time.